4 years ago, we made history in Guelph, electing Ontario's first Green MPP. And we've made history again, re-electing Ontario's first Green MPP.
Joining me now is Mike Schreiner, newly re-elected as the MPP for Guelph. Thanks so much for joining me, Mike, and congratulations on your win.
Oh, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. Pleasure to join you, and just a lot of gratitude to the people of Guelph for trusting me to be reelected to be their voice at Queen's Park.
Yeah, as you pointed out on election night, you're the first Green MPP in Ontario re-elected. What's been special about Guelph that you've been able to find traction in this riding?
Well, first of all, I just say that, Greens are here to stay. There were some folks suggesting that, maybe it was a one hit wonder, a one-time election, and then we'd go away. But I think we've proven that we can be effective at Queen's Park. Over and over again, so many people have said that, Greens have punched well above our weight, have an outsized influence in the legislature. And I think we've, demonstrated an ability to get things done for people here in Guelph, but across the province. And I think that's one of the reasons I was reelected, was just working really hard for my community. I love Guelph, and I love working hard for Guelph. And I really appreciate and am honored to be, my community's voice in the legislature. And I'm looking forward to rolling my sleeves up and working really hard for Guelph in the next provincial parliament, but also making sure that I hold government accountable as an opposition leader in the legislature as well. We saw a lot of momentum for the Ontario Greens coming out of especially the leaders debate during the election campaign, and we want to build on that momentum to be an effective opposition member at Queen's Park.
Speaking of first, this election, you participated in the leaders debates. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I think it was a real important opportunity for the Ontario Green Party. For the first time, millions of Ontarians had an opportunity to see what the party stands for, what our vision and values are, what our policy priorities are. And, we felt a lot of momentum coming towards the Ontario Greens after the leaders debate, an uptick in the number of volunteers, donations, sign requests. We were of the four major parties. We were the only party that actually saw our votes go up, not down in this election. Unfortunately, we were not able to translate that into a second seat. Came very close in Parry Sound, Muskoka, but didn't quite get over the finish line. But I think we can build on that to, be in a position to elect more Greens in the next provincial election. But I think more importantly, between now and then, making sure that we help mobilize citizens to be their voice and to support communities at the legislature.
Yeah, you mentioned that the Greens were the only party to increase their votes. Low voter turnout was a big story on election night. What do you attribute that to? And do you see that as a problem that's in need of a solution?
Yeah, I'm deeply concerned about the low voter turnout. I mean, the lowest in Ontario history. And I think it's a responsibility of all of us, I include myself, but I would say, all the political parties to really analyze why voter turnout was so low in this election. I mean, I think some of it is related to the pandemic. I think some of it's related to the fact that it really wasn't a change election, and usually see higher voter turnout, when people want to change government. But to have the lowest in Ontario's history, just to write it off only because of the pandemic and the lack of a desire for change, I think would be an error to dismiss it for those reasons only. And so, one of the things that I'm really working on right now is meeting with folks, talking to people, analyzing this election, and really trying to figure out why voter engagement, voter turnout was so low. Because I think democracy is vital. Democracy is precious. I mean, so many people throughout Canadian history have given up their lives to defend our democracy. And I think we owe it to all of us to make sure that it's strong and vibrant, and to understand why there was such low voter engagement in this election.
So as you turn your attention back to Queen's Park for the next 4 years, you're no longer a rookie MPP. What have you learned last session that you can take into the next 4 years?
Well, I think one of the things I've learned is that, I can effectively work across party lines to deliver things for my constituents and for the people of Ontario. And so I'll continue to do that work. But I also think particularly right now, have a special responsibility as the only opposition party leader that won't have the word interim in front of their name, to be a strong, effective opposition at Queen's Park. And one of the things I've really learned is that when you can have MPPs work with citizen and community groups, you can be really effective in the legislature. And a couple quick examples, in the early days of the Ford government, when they were put forward legislation to open the Greenbelt for development, we helped lead the charge to push back against that. And the Ford government backed off. Again, when they, proposed building an Amazon warehouse on the Duffins Creek wetlands, we helped lead the citizens movement against that, and the Ford government backtracked. So I think, I'll be learning from those efforts about how the Ontario Greens, my role as an MPP, can work with citizen and community groups to push for the things that people want, and especially to push for protecting the people and places we love in Ontario. We know the Ford government is likely going to push a sprawl agenda. And, I'm going to do everything I can to work hard with people in the legislature and people outside the legislature to build a movement to really say we have to protect the farmland that feeds us, the wetlands that clean our drinking water, protect us from flooding, and the nature that helps mitigate the severity of climate fueled extreme weather events.
Yeah, it felt at times like your party was the only one talking about the climate emergency. How do you put that on the agenda at Queen's Park and make it the priority it needs to be?
Yeah, it's really disappointing to be in what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has described as a now or never moment to address the climate crisis, to really be the only party that really talked about the climate emergency in any substantive way. And so I think it really highlights the important role the Ontario Greens play in Ontario politics, the vital role we play in the legislature, even if it's with only one seat at this point. And so I'm going to continue to push for policies to reduce climate pollution, but also push for policies that will ensure the investments we need to make sure our communities are climate ready and our infrastructure is ready for the impacts of the climate crisis. I mean, we saw that with the horrific storm that hit southern Ontario during the election. There were places in the Ottawa region that went 2 weeks without electricity. And so, it is clear that our infrastructure, our communities are not ready for the climate crisis, and we're going to have to make the investments to ensure that they are.
And how do you balance being the leader and having that big picture view on Ontario, but also representing Guelph and this constituency?
Yeah, I think I've shown an ability to do both of those jobs. I mean, part of it is it's not a one person operation. I have a whole team of people who work really hard. My constituency staff, I think do a fantastic job of working hard and serving people here in Guelph. I always tell all of my staff that, every single person in Guelph, whether they voted for me or not, they're our boss, and we have to work hard for them. And so delivering that kind of customer service, I think is really important. Working hard and respectfully working across party lines to make sure that we deliver on the things our community needs. For example, we secured funding for the first major expansion renovation of Guelph General Hospital in 20 years, is going to be starting soon. And so it's like working hard with members of our community to make sure that the Guelph's needs are heard and met at Queen's Park will be vitally important. And I think government members understand that my role as an opposition member is to hold government accountable, to speak out against things that a significant number of people oppose. And I think if I can do that in an effective and respectful way, that's how you're effective in opposition. But it's also how you do it in a way that also ensures that you can work with other parties in areas where you agree and that really put people before politics.
Well, I'm sure it will be a busy and eventful 4 years, but take a moment to enjoy last week and the big moment there. And thanks for joining me today.
Hey, my pleasure. And once again, just a big shout out of thanks to people in Guelph. I'm going to continue to work really hard for you. And, I deeply appreciate you putting your trust in me with your vote.